Hey guys, welcome back to another YouTube video. And today's you guys, now that I have watched the 5th Scream movie that came out a couple of days ago, it is now time to rank all 5 of the Scream movies from the worst to the best. But as always, I do have some announcements to make. Per usual, I'm wearing the fitting shirt for this movie and for this ranking. And just recently, I actually did pick up this Scream shirt because I didn't really have any Ghostface shirts. There's a lot that I seen like around at my mall and all that, but I just never picked up a Scream shirt. So before seeing this movie, did a little shopping and I got myself this nice Scream shirt, which I think is very, very simple but a very cool design. So we'll be wearing that for the video, and this should be a pretty quick ranking. As long as I don't blabber along or anything like that. We only got 5 movies to rank. I really like these nice short and sweet rankings. But the one big announcement that I want to make, besides future videos, which I'll talk about a little later, is that I will be moving soon. Not out of town, but I will be moving into a new house. So I will probably not be too active on YouTube after I get these next few videos done, because I'm going to need time to obviously get everything set up in my room. I'm going to have to reset up my computer, all my consoles, all that kind of stuff. And honestly, I don't even know if I'm going to be doing my videos in my room anymore. I'm likely going to be doing them in a separate room, likely in the basement, because we have like a big room in the basement now. So yeah, that is something to definitely get excited for. There's probably going to be a much better setup, a better atmosphere. Just depends on how I feel, because I don't obviously want to just film my videos in a dark basement or whatever. Definitely gonna have to flare it up a little bit so that you guys are looking at something interesting and not just, you know, a wall. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna need some preparation for that, but don't expect me to be too active probably in the month of February when I'm still getting prepared. It just really depends on how fast I can get everything set up and all that. So I'm going to be releasing the next couple of videos, and then I'm going to be moving, and yeah, you will likely not see me film any other videos in this house, but I will be using my grandpa's phone, as I have been since the beginning of my channel. So you might see me film some videos in the house. It really just depends. I would like to start recording with my own phone, although my phone's quality is really bad. So that's where getting a webcam comes in, so that I can film on my computer. There's just a lot of plans that I have, and I'm not really sure what I'm going to be doing next. So just bear with me there that I will be moving, so there's going to be like a huge change of plans and all that stuff. But it'll be a nice change for my channel. But other than that, stay tuned for the future content. There's going to be a Ghostbusters ranking, because I also recently seen Ghostbusters Afterlife. I know I'm a little bit late to the ranking and watching the movie and all that, but I will be making a ranking for that. And of course, the suggested changes to all of the DVD perks, well, at least DVD perks that I feel need changed in some way, either buffed or nerfed. So yeah, other than that, make sure you join the Discord. Link will always be in the description of every video, and read the community post, so that you can stay up to date with any potential future changes. Other than that, like and subscribe. I was going to say like and subscribe. Other than that, let's get on to the ranking. But number 5, and before I even mention number 5, I just want to say that there is no Scream movie that I think is really, really terrible, which is a good thing for the Scream franchise as a whole. I don't think they have ever made a really, really terrible movie. These movies are very, very close. It's just some of them are better by a small margin. I think Scream 3 is the only exception to that. It's not a terrible movie, but it isn't close to Scream 2 per se, by any slight margin. There's definitely a big difference between the two. But at number 5, as you can expect, will be Scream 3, which, again, I don't think is a terrible movie by any means. I've never even really understand what the problem was with people with this movie. Yeah, I never really understood what flaws people were necessarily pointing at with Scream 3. But I guess I could just see from the enjoyment that I get out of Scream 3 that I don't think it is the best Scream movie, out of all of them. I still think it's an enjoyable movie. I'd definitely watch it. Don't think it's terrible by any means. I just think the other Scream movies are just better. They have more unique qualities. And I think maybe the flaw for me about Scream 3 is that maybe it's just too generic and it doesn't really add anything much surprising to it. I think the big Scream reveal, I think it was very convoluted and didn't really make sense. It seemed like they tried to fit through so many different holes so that they can make it work. And once you got the reveal in this Scream movie, it was kind of like, okay, I'm trying to make sense of what you're saying here. And yeah, I don't think the Ghostface in this movie was all that interesting. It just seemed like they had to go through so many loopholes to make him work as having a motive for going after Sidney. That being said, the third act is a really, really good third act. Really, really loved it when Sidney is going head to head with the Ghostface once he's revealed. It's a really, really good scene. We have Dewey and we have Gale helping her out in the third act as well. So it's a really good third act. But yeah, I think those are all really the flaws that I can point out with the movie, except for just one little thing, which I've heard other people complain about, is that stupid voice box that Ghostface has on this movie makes no sense. I don't know why they didn't just stick with the voice box where his voice gets deeper or whatever, and it makes him seem like, some handsome man or whatever. But in this movie, somehow in 2000, there's a piece of technology where you can literally perfectly mock somebody else's voice. Yeah, I'm not buying it. That is absolute BS. There's no piece of technology in 2000 or even now that can exactly mock your voice. They didn't even do this in the new Scream movie. Spoiler alert. So yeah, that didn't make any sense to me. But other than that, let's get on to the number 4 spot. Number 4, and this is spoilers in case you have not seen the movie yet, it is going to be Scream, the newest Scream, which I of course do not have the DVD for. In fact, the only DVD that I have for the Scream movies is a 4-movie collection for all of the Scream movies that came out. So I decided I would just put pictures up on the screen because I would be showing you the exact same DVD over and over again. I know I got a little bit lazy with the collecting on the DVDs and stuff like that. Maybe in the future I'll get my own individual DVDs and stuff. But anyways, at number 4 is going to be the newest Scream, Scream 2002, whatever you want to call it, Scream 5. Preferably, I would say Scream 5. It connects to all the other Scream movies. Yeah, by the way, I'm going to say this one more time. Spoiler warning, if you have not seen the new Scream movie, skip this part. I'm going to be getting into major spoilers, discussing everything. But yeah, the newest Scream comes at number 4, which I was a little bit surprised about. Being what this movie would call a requel movie, I was a little bit surprised that it fell a little bit short from getting ahead of Scream 4, but there were definitely a lot of flaws in this movie, although I walked out of the theater very happy. I was a lot happier walking out of the theater for this movie than I was for Halloween Kills. When I walked out of the theater for Halloween Kills, I kind of just tried to be happy because I just got done watching a Halloween movie, but in my head, I knew something was not right, and that the movie was not anything great. But for Scream 2002, I would definitely say it was a really good movie. Although it just fell a little bit short of getting ahead of Scream 4, which is its main competitor. And I think the reason why it fell a little bit short between Scream 4 and Scream 5 was that they trusted their new characters a little bit too much. In this movie, unlike Scream 4, it felt like the original actors were just there to be kind of a fan service. In Scream 4, it wasn't really much of a fan service. It still felt like they were kind of tied in and that they were supposed to be there. But in Scream 5, of course, to bring them back, it's more of just for a fan service and not really to tie them much to the plot. They did do a nice job tying them to the plot, but of course they're just kind of there for the fan service. They're there to help out the main characters because they've been through the situation before. The killer is not really going after Sidney and all of the other legacy characters, although at the end it just so happens that they did because they were with them. But yeah, the main flaw with this movie is that they trust the new characters a little bit too much. I don't think that the new characters are really terrible. There's a couple of them, especially the killers. The ones that we find out are the killers, which is Richie and then the other girl, forget her name, to me, they're kind of throwaway characters for most of the movie, and I think that's just because they were trying not to reveal too much about them while foreshadowing a little bit throughout the movie, so that you weren't, like, it wasn't very obvious that they were going to be the killer. Although, unlike Spiral, when Spiral came out last year, I was not paying attention to who was going to be the Saw killer or whatever. I really wasn't paying attention throughout the entire movie. I was just focused on like the kills and all that. But in this movie, now that I had seen Saw, the entire movie I was completely focused on who's the killer. And I think because I was so focused on that, I guessed the killers pretty early on. I had an idea that it was going to be that one random girl that kind of wasn't there for most of the time, which gave her a lot of time to obviously be Ghostface and do the kills and stuff like that. And then I suspected Richie as being the counterpart. He was just a little bit too sketchy for me. So yeah, I suspected the killers very early on, which is kind of unusual of a Scream movie. And I think that's just because in this Scream movie, unlike when I was like a little kid and I was seeing the first Scream movies and I don't really understand what they were, in this movie I was dead set on finding who was the killer. So it's not like a big problem. The main problem, though, I need to discuss this. The imbalance in the characters. The characters, I think, for the most part are fine. Like I said, there are a lot of... there are a few throwaway characters here and there that are kind of just there to be killed off. But if you're going to put in a new set of characters and trust that they can replace the role for the most part, because the legacy characters, unlike in Halloween Kills, were not really the stars of the show. You got to put them up to high expectations. And I'm not saying that they were all really, really bad. I'm just saying that they weren't the best for being the main, the main set of characters in this movie. I don't think they were the best friend group for a Scream movie. It seemed like they were all kind of like chopped up in different parts, unlike the other Scream movie where they're all like in the same grade and they're all going to the same school. In this one, you have like a friend group here, you have a friend group here, you have a friend group here. Like, it doesn't really feel like they're all part of one group. So I think they could have had a little bit more synergy and the characters could have just been a little bit better. And that being said, also there was a huge imbalance between having your new set of characters and the legacy characters. If you're going to bring in the legacy characters, I really do suggest that you at least balance the legacy characters with the main characters. Maybe that's just because they didn't want to make the mistake that Halloween Kills did. And, it wasn't just like bringing back the original characters completely. But in this movie, it just felt like the legacy characters, as they called them, it doesn't feel like it just felt like they were there for the most part. They were just kind of in the background until the final act, of course. One thing that obviously the imbalance issue, I think there could have been done a little bit more balancing with that. A mixed feeling for me was that they did kill off one of the legacy characters, which was Dewey. I kind of like that, but I kind of don't. I'm not really sure if it's like a good decision or anything. I guess in a Scream movie it makes a little bit more sense because Scream movies are self-aware. So I kind of mixed on whether or not they wanted to kill Dewey off or not. But at least when they did kill off Dewey, he died a hero, I guess. So I think they did a great job breaking the rules and killing a legacy character, but it's still kind of in the mixed category for me. Other than that, in the positive character category, the two main characters, which I think was like Tara and then the other girl, were really, really great. If you discard all of the other characters that were just kind of in the background, the main two were really, really great for this movie. I really liked it. Final act was really great. Before this movie happened, I thought, so what's going to be the motive for the killers? Like, what is going to be this movie what is this movie going to have to talk for? Because obviously in the second Scream movie it was sequels. In the third Scream movie it was about trilogies. In the fourth Scream movie it was about remakes, because remakes were getting popular around that time. And in this movie I was like, so what are they going to talk about now? And they brought up an interesting kind of idea that they made up, which is requels, which is where you make modern day slasher movies and you bring back all the original actors from the slasher movies, like they did with Halloween, for example. And I thought that was a really interesting idea, and they tied that really nicely into this movie and did a great job having something to talk about like they have had for all the other Scream sequels. And it gave for an interesting motive for the killers, which was like toxic fan base, that they demand the slasher movies to be how they want and how they see would be perfect. And I think that is an interesting motive. So yeah, very mixed feelings here and there about the new Scream movie, but overall, I thought it was a pretty solid sequel, or as you would like to call it, a requel, as they call in this movie. Nothing more to say. Let's get on to the next spot. So at number 3 is going to be Scream 4, which I really did think that Scream 5 was going to beat out Scream 4. But I think Scream 4 beats Scream 5 by a razor's edge, and I think Scream 4 gets a little bit too much hate. I think there are people I'm well aware that there are people out there who would have put Scream 4 behind Scream 3. But I really don't think it's a bad movie. At least for bringing back the original actors, which this was only 11 years after the previous sequel. So, there wasn't really much of, it wasn't really much of a requel, as Scream 5 would call it. As much it was just like a plain sequel. So, yes, they brought back the original actors. But the whole problem with trusting your main characters wasn't really a big issue in this movie. I don't think the main characters were fantastic, but I think they did a pretty good job. And I'm not as hard on this movie as I am with Scream 5, because Scream 5 was definitely more of a requel than Scream 4 was, because this is only 11 years after the third Scream movie. But other than that, they do bring in a couple of new characters that tie in with the original actors, like Dewey. He now has a new, rookie cop that joins, which, funny enough, she actually came back for the, next Scream movie. So that was pretty cool. But other than that, like, the other cops in this movie, besides the main rookie one, are just very dumb and throwaway. What else? I can't really think of anything else that I would complain about for Scream 4. I will say this. I don't think that the motive for the ghost faces in this movie was as interesting as it was for Scream 5. And I think that's because they didn't really have a whole lot. This was probably the Scream movie where they didn't really have a whole lot to talk about, because this wasn't necessarily a remake Scream movie. And what they were talking about was remakes. Because obviously you had the Halloween remake, you had the Friday the 13th remake, you had the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, you had the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, you had all these remakes that came out before Scream 4 came out. But they didn't really have as much to talk about in this movie, because this movie isn't necessarily a remake. So I'm not really sure what the whole conversation between the sequels in this movie was, like they always do in Scream movies, and I can't even remember what the motive was for the killers. I just remember the killers not... I have watched this recently, but I wasn't really paying attention that much. I just remember that the killers or whatever just weren't really all that interesting. But that being said, I still think it is a really solid Scream sequel. Final act, I think, stretches out a little bit. The beginning of the movie, the opening scene, though, I think it was something really, a little bit more unique than they did for the previous Scream movies, so I did enjoy that. But other than that, a pretty solid Scream sequel, and just beats Scream 5 by a razor's edge. Just for having less flaws, really. It didn't really have any extra bonuses that Scream 5 didn't have. I think it just had less flaws. And that might have just been because this movie was directed by Wes Craven, and of course Scream 5 was not directed by Wes Craven. So, that might explain the little margin, because the new directors for Scream 5 did do a great job for the first time not having Wes Craven. So yeah, let's get on to the number 2 spot. So this should be fairly obvious. It is going to be Scream 2. There's not much that I really have to say. Obviously, in this movie, the whole conversation is about sequels. It's about more blood, more kills, better kills, and all that. And that's exactly what this movie does. It is basically the Scream movie with a new set of actors, your original actors coming back in, like a new friend group, a new set of, the original actors coming back, and, more kills, more blood, all that kind of stuff. Although they do kill off Randy in this movie, which is really, really tragic, but understandable because it is a Scream sequel. They gotta kind of pump up the nerves, I guess you want to say. I did not, when I watched this movie for the first time, did not expect the Ghostface killers. And once again, that might be because I wasn't paying attention, but my eyes were on the love interest for most of the movie, and surprisingly, even though there was like a lot of foreshadowing with him throughout the movie, he was not the killer. It was Mickey and then Billy Loomis's mother. So yeah, we get a new set of ghost faces that are still really solid, still got a solid motive and reasonable motive, which is something that the Scream movies surprisingly are good at, is they never really run out of motive reasons. Yeah, just a solid sequel as you would expect, just your very generic and solid sequel as you would expect out of a slasher movie. I think that there was one thing I was going to say, and yes, that was in this movie they talked a lot about having more kills and more blood and all that. And I was really hoping, forgot to mention this when I was talking about Scream 5. I was really hoping that in Scream 5 they were going to make a little bit more interesting kills. Um, because most of the Scream movies are just like stabbing each other and all that. Not really, you don't really go to a Scream movie for seeing really gory and innovative kills. So I thought to myself, hopefully Scream 5 is going to fix this issue, and that makes me. I think that gives me a reason to talk about it in Scream 2, is that because it's a sequel, you would expect the kills to be a little bit more innovative than just stat kills are in the Scream movies. So I wish they would have been a little bit more innovative with the kills instead of just more blood and more kills. Be a little bit more innovative with the kills. That's not too much big of an issue for me though, because I don't really go to a Scream movie expecting very innovative kills. I go to the movie to watch it for the first time and kind of be a whodunit and be surprised at the ending of the movie. So it's not that big of an issue. I really wish they would have kept that promise because they were talking about it in the movie or whatever. So I think that's all I have to say for Scream 2. Let's get on to the number one spot. This one should be fairly obvious. It is, of course, the original Scream from 1996. This movie deserves so much credit in the slasher family, whatever you want to call it, because for probably a little over 20 years, slasher movies were always kind of the same generic slasher movies with the same rules and standards and all that. But Scream cut those standards, and for a slasher director like Wes Craven, it comes off as surprising that he would make a movie like this when he also directed the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. But he cut away from the usual, like he did in Nightmare on Elm Street, and he made a very self-aware slasher whodunit mystery movie that made for a movie that completely shifted the tone of slasher movies for basically how they have been now. Almost all slasher movies after Scream have been a touch self-aware. But if you watch any slasher movie before Scream, they all feel kind of the same when it comes to the tone. But when you watch Scream, it's completely different, and that's what I really love about Scream, is that it doesn't have that same generic tone that all of the other slasher movies have. And Wes Craven, he just did a great job at cutting away from those rules and standards and making for a self-aware slasher movie it's really, really great. It's obviously a mystery movie, and the killers they're more of psychos than they are of just like unstoppable beings, because a lot of the slashers in the the killers in previous slasher movies before Scream were like these immortal beings who would come back every sequel. It seemed like they would never die. But these ones are just two normal teenagers who are psychopaths, and they have a just perverse motive that is very, very disgusting, and you just want to see them die at the ending of the movie. You want Sidney Prescott to just pick up a knife and just stab them in the head just because there's so much of psychos. And everything from, how he uses the house to make interesting chase scenes and everything like that. He really utilized the house very, very well in this movie for the chase scenes, and obviously having everybody there for the whole party and everything. He really utilized the big house very nicely in this movie. Sidney Prescott, probably one of the best scream queens out there in the slasher movies. I think she's definitely up there with Jamie Lee Curtis. Probably, you could definitely argue that she's better than Jamie Lee Curtis. There's an argument there between who is better. So, definitely a really great final girl. Probably one of the only memorable final girls besides Laurie Strode in any other slasher movie. So that's a bonus as well. One thing I do want to mention that I didn't mention for the other Scream sequels, and this especially applies to Scream 5, for being a very self-aware Scream movie, and I don't think this is as prevalent in this first Scream movie, only maybe a little bit, for being a very self-aware Scream movie, this definitely, once again, this applies more to Scream 5, once they get to the scenes where you know a character is basically screwed because they're all alone, and they're all alone and they're doing something stupid or whatever, for being such a self-aware Scream movie, when it comes to the moment that that they're in danger, it's like they lose all of their self-awareness by the flip of a switch. And this was really, really prevalent in the Scream 5 movie. There were a couple of scenes in there that I could talk about, but I'm not going to get into that definitely show this. In this Scream movie, maybe a little bit here and there. I just wanted to mention it because I forgot to mention it when I was talking about Scream 5. But other than that, the first Scream, really, really solid movie. There were actually a few innovative kills in this movie, especially that garage kill. That's something that had never been done before. So, there are a few innovative kills here and there, but other than that, really just your generic stabbing kills that you get out of Scream movies. And they really emphasize that. I'm sorry, I keep cutting back to Scream 5. They really emphasize that in Scream 5. You literally have, probably 3 or 4 scenes where Ghostface is just, unnecessarily stabbing them over and over again, even though they're clearly dead. Just wanted to mention that again. Scream, it's just a really solid slasher movie that shifted the standards of the slasher movies before it, and ultimately changed the slasher franchise forever. Probably not forever. It's gonna be like this, but you know what I mean. It created the much needed changes that slasher movies had, because, sorry guys, for the course of a little over 20 years when slasher movies became popular, we all were aware of the standards that slasher movies had, but we never wanted to mention them. We just wanted to enjoy the kills and everything. But when we were watching these slasher movies, you all were once saying, why aren't you running away? Or why aren't you getting the hell out of here? Why are you running into the woods or whatever? And this movie broke those rules and gave you the honest truth, which is something really, really great. It's like they're serving you, the watcher. And that's really, really great. So, Scream, one of the best slasher movies by far, definitely would be in my top 5 for the best slasher original movies. I think that is going to be it for the ranking. Alright, so we got done with that ranking. Hopefully I didn't go on for too long. I'm going to have to look at the recording time. Probably got over 20 minutes for sure, especially after all the blabbing I did for Scream 5. That's going to be it for the ranking. Stay tuned for the future content, and make sure you read the community post that you can keep updated with the changes that will be coming to the channel, of course. And I think that's all the announcements that I have to make. Join the Discord. Link will always be in the description of every video. Other than that, like and subscribe, guys, and I'll see you next time.